Hey everybody, my name is Tom, and as Macy just said, I work at Valve. The presentation today is really three big things. We're going to talk about kind of the opportunity of releasing a game on Steam, discuss some of the features and the things that Steam makes available to developers, and then talk about how to get started if you're interested. Some of you guys might have already launched a game on Steam, or maybe you're thinking about doing so in the future. So if some of this information is redundant, or you have deeper questions that you want to dig into, feel free to ask questions after the talk. There's also a couple other Valve employees here that I'll make wave their hands real fast. All three of us will be in the back of the auditorium or outside of the auditorium after the talk, and we'd love to chat with you guys more. So I'm going to jump right in. The outline today is really simple. The first thing I'm going to dig into is kind of the size of the Steam store and the nature of the opportunity on the platform. And then we're going to look at a little bit more in depth in some of the tools and features that we provide, both on the back end and on sort of the store and community angle. And then the last thing we're going to look at is kind of how easy it is to get started once you're ready. Steam has changed and evolved a lot in the last few years. And so we want to both kind of showcase some of the new and interesting things coming down the line for customers, and also talk a little bit more about how easy it is now to get started if you're interested. So right off the bat, Steam is a really big opportunity. It's really diverse. There's a big variety of games and customers on the platform, and the platform continues to grow. We're averaging around 14 million concurrent users a day at our peak. If you go back a couple years to around 2015, that was closer to 8 million, so a little less than doubled in the last 2 years, which we're really excited about. There's about 67 million monthly active players, and then 27 or 28 million new first-time purchasers since January of 2016. So a little more than a year and a half ago, and we've averaged about 1.5 million new first-time customers every month since then. That means customers who have created a brand new Steam account and then either bought a game or downloaded a free game and made a transaction inside of it for the very first time. So there's a lot of users coming into Steam every day, and they're coming in from a more and more varied backgrounds. The pie chart here is year-to-date revenue, I think up to the end of June. The two biggest slices of the pie are North America and Western Europe, and that's been true for years now on Steam. Those markets continue to grow and expand, but the final third of the pie graph is where a lot of changes have happened and where a lot of exciting growth has happened. The next biggest slice of Asia is relatively new. If you looked at a graph like this from 2013, 14, 15, Asia would have been only a couple percentage points of the overall pie, and now it's closer to 17. A lot of that growth has been driven by Korea, Japan, and China. And there's a really interesting sort of virtuous cycle that's happening on Steam over the last few years. On one hand, we've been investing a lot of energy on the platform side to localize the store, regionalize different features, price in more currencies, and accept more payment methods from more customers. And that helps bring new users in for sure. But we've also greatly improved the variety of games and the style of games available on the store. So if there's a type of content and there's not much of it on Steam and more of those games start showing up, that tends to bring in a lot of new customers from new regions or even new slices of gamers that previously didn't spend a lot of time on PC. And as those new customers come in, the opportunity gets a little bit larger for game developers in that genre or from that region or in that language, and so on and so forth. So we've seen some awesome growth. And that variety on Steam continues to improve. We see it as one of the platform's biggest assets. If you look back, whether over the last couple years or just the last couple weeks, the variety of games coming to Steam is kind of astounding, and it's really impressive to see how many different types of games are successful. It's not like there's just one mechanic or one genre that does well on Steam. You can make a really intense murder mystery game, you can make a point-and-click adventure, you can make a game about repairing cars, and all of those games can do really well alongside more traditional genres like a Metroidvania platformer, a military first-person shooter, and so on. And so that makes Steam kind of a different kind of opportunity. It's one thing to say, hey, look, we've got a zillion customers, and there's a lot of people here, and that's cool, but the difference of the PC opportunity is really exciting. For one thing, Steam as a store is designed to make sure that great games find their audience dynamically and automatically. So when customers show up, they don't all see the same list of identical content. customers see recommendations and suggestions and games that are tailored to them based on a ton of different things, like what language they speak, what types of games they've been playing in the past, what games their friends play. There's a massive variety of business models on Steam as well, so you've got a lot more freedom to say, what's really the right way for my game to connect with customers? There's not an overarching pressure of, hey, anything above a certain price point has no chance of survival, or I have to be free or I'll never reach customers. There's a ton of different ways that games are monetizing on the PC. And there's also a massive variety in the scope and style and mechanics of games. I'm going to dig into 3 kind of really interesting recent examples in a minute. But because you're dealing with the PC, you have a lot of unlocked opportunity, whether you're dealing with the Steam controller that Valve manufactured and designed, traditional X input gamepads, keyboard and mouse, whatever the case may be. There's a massive scope change when you come to Steam, and a lot of platform opportunities are unlocked. And then the last thing about the store that is a little different is, number one, we don't sell ad space or do any in-game advertisements. So really the store is about recommending content that is right for an individual customer as opposed to who had the biggest marketing budget. And as a Steam business team, we're not in the business of making a lot of editorial decisions to say, hey, these are the games that we've selected that should be shown to the most customers. It's less about impressing, myself or a handful of other people at the office, and more about impressing your customers. And that's kind of one of the bigger takeaways that we hope everybody comes away from is when you launch a game on Steam, you're less focused on figuring out the right metric to, trick players into coming back for a second go or show up to more users on a chart, and more focused on delighting them and making sure they have a great time when they've bought or played your game. So let's look at some of those games that have enjoyed benefits from this different kind of opportunity. This first one, these are all games that released very recently and that were kind of fun for us to highlight to show off, wow, just in 10 days, what amazing things have come out on Steam. This first game, Behold the Kickmen, is a really creative, unique game. It's kind of soccer, but deliberately with a lot of the rules wrong. It was made by a single dev. Dan Marshall made the game himself. He tweeted recently that just in the first week, he made back his dev costs. So this is not a game that was a barn-burning top seller, but it was really fun, creative. It found its niche audience quickly on Steam and delighted a lot of customers. Another game that kind of has a different business model, different background, but still was able to find a lot of users is Kingdoms and Castles. This is a cool one for us because it was originally crowdfunded on Fig, which is completely okay, of course, for Steam wherever games were originally funded or wherever they originally released. It kind of is a neat genre mashup of city building, tower defense, and strategy. And when I spoke to the developers, it's Lion Shield LLC made this game. They actually started this game as a mobile project, but as the game kind of improved and as they got more user feedback, they realized, you know what, there's more that we want to do. There's a lot of things we want to add to this game that we're not sure we can really pull off in mobile, so it slowly transitioned into being a PC game. And it hung around on the top sellers chart for its entire launch week and is still doing really well. And the last one, as if there was any game better to explain how incredible the variety of games on Steam is. Dream Daddy, a dad dating simulator, which many of you might have seen in the last week. Chock full of dad jokes, really great sense of humor, a ton of personality in this game. And this is a game that could work anywhere. This is a game that could very easily be successful on a bunch of different platforms with a bunch of really simple inputs. It's a very simple genre-style dating simulator. You choose your dialogue options and you move forward. And this game, despite really having no traditional marketing budget and not being picked to show up by Valve in any way, debuted as a top-selling game on Steam and has hung around the top 5 best-selling games on Steam for the last week and a half. And it's from Game Grumps. So the point is not just that, oh, you can release weird games on Steam, because yeah, maybe everybody already knew that, but it's that these games can actually find an audience and be really successful. Steam as a store and as a platform is designed around figuring out what is that kind of quirky new game, or what's the creative thing that somebody's done, and putting that game in front of the right customers. So we show off new recent top sellers. We make recommendations to customers from new released games based on what they've played, what their friends have played, and we give a lot of these games a chance to find their audience on the platform. So the biggest takeaway is that Steam represents a massive opportunity. We've got tons of customers all over the globe. That audience keeps getting bigger every day, and they're very hungry for a variety of games. There's not one type of game that is going to succeed on Steam. You don't need to go and make a zombie survival battle royale crafting game to reach an audience on the PC. Although you can if you want to. So the next section here that I want to dig into is sort of the features and tools that Steam provides to developers, and by extension, in a lot of cases, to customers. Steamworks is a set of services and APIs that has improved over the years dramatically, and we keep adding new elements and tools, many of them directly because of requests from developers like you. So here's what you get, and I'm going to run through each one of these 4 bullet points individually, but Steam represents an open platform with a ton of freedom. You get access to powerful APIs and features that are free and open for you to use how you wish. Steam is a games-first client and library. Steam was kind of designed around games and making sure it was easy for customers to find games that they love and then share them and discuss them with friends. So an open platform is something really important to us. We tend to talk about it a lot because we're direct beneficiaries of the openness of PC. There's been a ton of innovation and creativity that's happened on the PC platform, and Valve and Steam have been able to benefit from that tremendously and pass that benefit along, of course, to our platform. So one of the ways that Steam does that is by capitalizing on the fact that PCs are not just consumption devices. They're not a one-way portal. They are a two-way street, and they're really good for creation, not just consumption. And that comes in a lot of different forms. On one hand, it's a very beneficial aspect because when you're playing a game on Steam, you also have access to any of the other applications or features that you want to use. It's really, really easy to record your gameplay footage with another application or Alt-Tab into Twitch or whatever the case may be. When a gamer is playing or a streamer is playing through Steam, they have the rest of the PC and all that it offers at their fingertips. The other side of the equation for us is user-generated content. And that comes in a lot of different forms. In some cases, user-generated content means the very traditional style of, hey, you have a map editor or a level editor, your customers can create content and then share it with the rest of the users, dramatically extending the life of your game, making it more interesting. It also shows up in other interesting ways. It's not at all uncommon for partners on Steam to have a really active customer in their community and hire that person as a community manager, or have a really active mod team building amazing mods for their game and hire that person or that group of people as an expansion of their team. The other cool thing about Steam is that every Steamworks feature is free and optional. And there's way too many for me to have bothered listing here, but asynchronous multiplayer, Steam Cloud, matchmaking and lobbies, trading cards, etc. It's kind of an a la carte menu for game developers to pick and choose what features solve problems for them. And because Steam is an open platform, if you're using other solutions for some of these services, that's completely fine with us. The hope really for the set of Steamworks features and APIs is that developers can plug into the ones that they want and take advantage of that and make their customers happy while pretty much ignoring ones that aren't useful or using substitutes as the case may be. The second to last piece here is really a games first client and library. When a user opens the Steam client, they're plugged directly into a games first experience, and that's really what Steam has always been about. And so when you open your library, you have direct access to all the games you play and a really rich feed of other activity, which I'll talk about in a second. And what that really looks like is a massive social network focused on playing and discussing games. This is kind of a random snapshot from my own activity feed in Steam where I've got a recommendation from a curator I follow, TechRaptor. I can see that one of my friends has wishlisted a game. I can see the games that my other friends are playing and unlocking achievements in. When you join Steam as a customer and when you ship your game on Steam as a developer, you're plugging into a kind of constantly spinning wheel of content and recommendations and interactions that are all designed around games. And that shows up in really interesting ways. This is a snapshot of my personal Steam user profile. I'm a really big fan of a game called Bastion, so I set their Bastion profile art as my background. I can share screenshots like an image from a game that I played, or favorite games, badges that I've unlocked, things that I want to trade for from friends, etc. And I can also see what my other friends are up to in terms of games they're playing or who's online right now. And all of this is built in and free and automatic. So when your game comes to Steam, it's trivially easy for you to start plugging into some of these features and network effects, which we found to be extremely valuable. So assuming you're interested in the opportunity that Steam provides or you want to take advantage of some of these features, how do you get started? Well, whether you're a developer who is already a Steamworks partner or you've never launched a game on Steam before, in the past it wasn't always super easy or clear how to get your game on Steam. And we've done a ton of work to make that a lot more transparent and a lot more easy. And the great thing about Steam is that wherever you are in your development cycle, whether you just launched the game on PlayStation last week and you're figuring out what to do next, or you're just trying to secure funding for a game concept that you and your team just came up with, or somewhere in between, you can join whenever you're ready. It's a super easy and straightforward process, and we don't have any exclusivity obligations or requirements, so you can jump into Steam and the PC space when you're ready. We think it's awesome for you to do that earlier rather than later so that you find out what's available and can start integrating platform features, but there's no requirements at all around there. So when it comes to the fundamentals of bringing your game to Steam, we very recently launched a program called Steam Direct. And the goal of Steam Direct is to make sure that any game developer who wants to bring their game to the Steam marketplace on PC can do so in a really streamlined and predictable way. It's available worldwide, it's localized, and anybody can get started at partner.steamgames.com. So if you've got your laptop out and you want to check it out, dive right in. What you'll see when you get there is a really simple step-by-step process. You'll start by agreeing to digital paperwork, which of course you can review, share with your lawyers, do what you need to do. You'll pay a $100 per game recoupable fee. So you put that money down up front, and then once your game starts selling on Steam, you earn it back. There's an app review, which we deliberately have opted away from any sort of onerous cert process, and instead really focused on functionality for customers. So some of the biggest goals of the app review process are to make sure that the information on your store page is readable and accurate, and when a customer buys your game or adds it to their account on Steam, if it's free, it'll actually work. We want to make sure when you download and install a game on Steam, it's going to run as expected, include the features as advertised, and move on. So it's kind of like an extra level of QA to make sure that when your launch day happens, you don't have a bunch of sad or confused customers saying, hey, I'm getting an error, I can't launch the game, or whatever the case may be. And then once you've gone through all the process, you can release your game when you're ready. This is a big step forward from us, especially any of you who maybe have been developing games for a longer time or had a game come through Steam Greenlight or wherever the case may be. A big focus for us was making sure that you as developers could more easily plan and strategize around your Steam launch, and so we think Steam Direct is an awesome step to make that easier. We've also overhauled a lot of the dev support elements of the platform, and one of the ways that that's most visible is in our documentation. The screenshot here captures kind of our new documentation view. We've added much better navigation and also went through and revised and revamped a lot of the articles. So whether you've been using Steam for years or you're brand new to the PC space, you can really quickly and easily access a bunch of different stuff. Now, some of it is really technical in nature, as you might imagine. How to upload a build to Steam, how do I integrate this feature, how do I take advantage of the Steam inventory service, whatever the case may be. And a lot of it also is kind of functional and philosophical advice. So how do you want to think about in terms of your discounting practices, or what's the best way to make a trailer, or whatever the case may be. The other new element is our developer help site. So that's a way for you to directly contact Valve at any time. And it makes life a lot easier for devs and us by helping us sort of route questions or concerns to the right people internally at Valve quickly. If you are coming to PC from mobile, it's super easy to get started, but there's a few quick things to consider. One of them is input. It sounds overwhelmingly basic, but it's always worth reminding folks that a lot of customers on the PC are going to expect keyboard and mouse support, or going to expect X input or Steam controller support. You're going to want to think carefully about resolution. What does your game look like if somebody puts it in full screen mode? Do your graphics and UI hold up to a larger screen? There's a lot of business model considerations. That's probably a whole hour-long talk by itself. But you should know that you have a lot of freedom. If you've launched a game for free on mobile and you're not sure if it should be a free-to-play game on Steam, or it's ad-supported and you know that's not going to work on the PC and you want to move to a premium model. There's a lot of freedom there, and we're also happy to give advice and feedback there. And then the last thing to think about is user-generated content. If you have a game where you can put a level editor in front of your customers, or you can ask your community for help or feedback or launch your game into early access, there's a bunch of different ways for your customers to contribute to the game once it's on the PC. So the big takeaway is that it's easy and straightforward to sign up, and wherever you are in your development cycle, we'd really encourage you to take a look. That's the end of my presentation. I'd love to answer any questions if I think the microphones are already set up for that. A couple knock-on resources if you want to learn more. Partner.steamgames.com. That's where you can sign up for Steam Direct, read all of our documentation, even if you haven't signed up, and download the SDK. And then SteamDevDays.com, that's a conference that Valve put on in late 2016. And there's tons of talks giving business advice, talking about VR, how to take advantage of certain technical features, and so on. So thanks again so much for coming. Feel free to ask any questions if you have any, and I think we still have a few minutes for questions. Thanks.
So I guess what Steam has been doing in terms of like helping the user to discover certain style of game beyond just like current the tagging system. For example, that actually 2 examples. Like personally, I don't really like anything that's like medieval, historical, or medieval fantasy. Like I just am so tired of those games that if I see them, I just like auto filter them, and then or just like I just feel like a lot of story games with narrative nowadays like lumped into like maybe the story rich tag, but still like. Or will still have a pretty hard time of like finding specific thing I like within that. So has Steam been doing anything more on that front?
Yeah, I had the pleasure of speaking at DevGam on Monday and dug a little bit more into this in terms of slides, but one of the big things around discovery that we're working the hardest on is the feature called Curators. I referenced it kind of briefly in one of the earlier slides, but in short, there's curators on Steam that you can follow, and they make recommendations of games. And that service is being dramatically improved and overhauled. One of the ways that we want to improve it is actually pretty close to what you're asking about, which would be like kind of more narrow lists or types of games. So if you're really passionate about a certain type of content or you want to be exposed to more content, we want to make it a lot easier for you to discover curators that are recommending good games for you, but we also want to give the curators a lot more power so that they can make sub-lists of games that are in a certain category, or make a little bit more in-depth recommendations and make it easier for you to get exposed to them at the right time. But that barely scratches the surface. I mean, I think there's lots of things that we're working on that will hopefully be rolling out as we continue to improve the store and the client over time. Good question. Awesome. Well, we'll see you in the back if you guys want to talk more. Thanks again for coming.
Thanks again, Tom.